Oh, yeah.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So this is class 3 of 5 for Death and Rebirth, but we are taking a break next week for Thanksgiving week, so don't come next Monday. But we'll pick it back up in December and finish out the first 2 Mondays of December. And then we'll break and then come back for, what is it? Oh, I just looked at it and I forgot. No, it does. Oh, Refuge in the Three Jewels. That's what it is. And we'll start that in January, the first Monday of January, which is January 6th. So, and that's all I've got. Don't forget to silence cell phones. And then we've got a couple other announcements.
Okay, so I'm Karen Beasley, if you don't know me. Is this on? Yeah, just get real close. How about that? So Jill asked me to say a couple words about why I support the Kadampa Center and all the ways I support the Kadampa Center. So the why, the backstory to why is because I got interested in a book called A Course in Miracles. You guys might not know about that, but it talks about transcending your egoic identity and becoming liberated from suffering. And there aren't really a lot of churches around here that help you do that, but Kadampa Center is a place that actually teaches how to do that. So to me, that's really special, and that's why I've been coming here. Then all the ways that I support Kadampa Center, service and practicing and financially. So service like greeting people at the door or cutting out the holy images for Dharma burn or pricing bookstore items, things like that. Practicing is like the prostration challenge and the Tara praises at home and logging them on the little website and all that. And then of course financially. So financially I've done things like been a monthly sustainer, sponsored a teacher, a visiting teacher, and I give money for the modules, you know, and things that I come to. So that's me.
That's great. Yay. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. So we're having different people speak at different times to kick off this grand annual appeal. We're in the season, must be the season. If the leaves are falling, then we're talking about finances and service and things. So as Karen said, we have 4 ways to give. So the last one is in-kind donations like toilet paper, paper towels. And last year we talked about that a lot, and we had so many gifts that we couldn't fit them anywhere, which is great. So, but it really helped our bottom line. Like we didn't have to go run out and do that, which saved time, which saves money. So that wasn't the last way. So this year it's the prostration challenge, which I know you're doing vastly. Next year it's going to be mandala offerings with the hand mudra. So if you don't know what that is, we'll be explaining it. It's on the website. So that's one way to offer during the annual appeal. Service, in volunteering, there's so many ways, and then financial, which of course is the way that we keep things going. And so being 2020 next year, it will be hard not to talk about vision. That's the pun for everybody. And I was in the car with our German friends, and they were like, they weren't laughing. And I went, oh, wait, you probably have like a whole nother numbering system for 2020 vision. So of course, people are going to laugh when I tell a joke. So this is, the reason I'm here is just to show this challenge. If you were here yesterday, you heard us talk about it. So this, a lot of times we have things like new member challenge and increase your giving challenge, and we have gifts that we kind of incentivize you with. But this time we're wrapping them all up into one. So we had 4 generous people who gave. One gave $5,000 above her giving. One gave $3,000, and one gave $1,000, and one gave $300 to encourage us to fill in these circles. And the guy who gave $1,000 said, and if you get all 5 people, I'll give you another $1,000. So we can get people kind of excited about this. It's if you give monthly, then we are trying to encourage a little bit of thought maybe to giving a one-time gift to help us over this little budget deficit that happens every fall when things kind of get lean and then the gifts start to come in. So this challenge represents that. The gifts this year, the giveaways are, you will be entered to win a $25 gift certificate to the Himalayan store, Nawang and Tenzin. And then gifts to Frida Kahlo. We're going to give that away sooner than later since it ends sooner than later. And then a trip to Ocracoke. Dave Struble will fly you there with a friend and take a whole day. You get a gift card from another member who'll donate that. I'm sure someone will donate that. And then You get to spend the day, have the gift card, have dinner. It's really a sweet trip. Rose won last year and just loved it. I think Geshe Songpo went too.
Huh.
So maybe we should ask him and then put that in there. And you get to fly with Geshe Songpo.
Only if you donate from a DB class.
Only if you donate from a DB
That's
class.
special
Sweet.
DB
We're
offer.
classifying it now. I'll have to add another segment to my spreadsheet.
We're gonna start
This was from
competing.
DB, and this was with Steep and DB.
Right, right.
So that's the challenge.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much for your time, and now go back to Death.
Thank you. Any other announcements? That's it? Okay, so if you haven't met me, my nickname here is Steep. My birth name is Stephanie. You can call me either one. How many people have never been to the center before? Just so okay, well, welcome. So we're in the middle of what we call Discovering Buddhism. It's a, I don't know, it takes about 2 years to go through the whole cycle, but you can come in at any point in it and get something. So if we're saying something that seems a little strange, just come up and talk to one of us afterwards, because we're kind of building on different themes. And so this module is on, what's the exact title of this? Death and Rebirth. Death and Rebirth. It's going to be fun. So I was trying to make it fun, because otherwise, why would we come here and sit here and talk about these things? So that's what we're in. This is the third class, and the 2 previous classes were led by Venerable George. And how many people were here for his classes? Okay, great. All right. So we'll build a little on that and move forward. So what we always do in the beginning is we just relax for a little bit and meditate and just let go of Monday. So get into a comfortable position. We won't be doing this for, long period of time. And in the very beginning, I'm going to lead you through what's called the 9-round breathing meditation, just to even get ready for a meditation. And it includes breathing with a visualization. So what we do is we're going to breathe through our left nostril by closing our right nostril. We're going to inhale and imagine that we're inhaling pure white, purifying light going through our left channel. And then we are going to close our right nostril and exhale. And as we exhale, we're imagining that we are dispelling all negative desire and attachment in the form of like thick smoke. And then we do that 3 times. So you go ahead and try that so we're going to breathe in through our left, and then exhale through our right, exhaling all the negativities of desire and attachment. So they do that 2 more times. And then we reverse it. We're going to inhale white light through the right nostril. And we're going to exhale all negativities related to anger and hatred, which pollutes us, through our left nostril. And do that 3 times. And then the final round, we're going to inhale through both nostrils, imagining again pure light, and exhaling ignorance, confusion, unknowing. Imagine it coming out right between your eyebrows, just exhaling this smoke, and then inhaling again. So do that 3 times. And sometimes if you have a discomfort or a thought that's bothering you, put it with that smoke that's going out. So now if you think you have that, do the whole round 2 times on your own without me talking. So again, that first round is going to be inhale through the left. The second round is inhale through the right. And the third round is both. you finish, just keep breathing. Trying to shake off all the things that you've brought with you. And in Buddhism, we always start by examining our motivation and setting our motivation. The more altruistic the motivation, the better. That's our goal, is to try to raise our motivation from whatever brought us here, curiosity, whatever it is, stress relief, to try to include as many people as possible. And one easy way I find to do that, and so it doesn't just become rote, but I try to analyze and remember small acts that other people have done that have made a huge difference. Someone just smiling at me on the street, or when someone's rude, how it affects me. So the ways that we are so interconnected, that if I can achieve my goals of calmness, more wisdom, more compassion, this will definitely affect those around me. And so like that, I start to include my own reason for doing anything positive, to include more and more and more people, understanding the interdependence, the ripple effect that we have on each other. And so then with that motivation in mind, we try to make a strong determination to meditate here today, to study, to share, to think about these topics so that it benefits our mind in order to benefit all others. And so we'll continue just with a 5-minute meditation, focusing on our breath. This helps build our concentration, our ability of our mind to focus on one thing at a time. And so we tie our thoughts to our breath. As our thoughts travel, we bring it back to the breath. You can count each inhalation, exhalation as 1. If you want to go all the way to 10 and then come back to 1 or 5, whatever works best for you. And as your mind will definitely wander away, try to gently bring your mind back and just be happy that you noticed. You noticed your mind wandering. So let's do this for 5 minutes. And just as there is a pause between inhalation and exhalation, there's also usually a pause between your thoughts. It's not that you'll have no thoughts, it's that there is a pause between your thoughts arising. And if you can expand that spot and rest in that true nature of your mind, you'll develop more focus, more mindfulness. With practice, you can start to sense when the thought is arising like a wave. And just as you bring your awareness to it, it often will settle back down. And then you'll see the pause before another one rises up like a wave. Of course, sometimes it's just a white-capped ocean of thoughts. But with practice, you'll be able to expand that space and use it. I don't want us to meditate too long on a Monday night, or we will just go off to sleep. So, I am curious what you all are hoping to get from this class. At the end, I mean, there's certain goals that we have that students will get from this module, but what are some of the things that you have? What are some questions that you have that you definitely want to make sure we cover? Or some concerns or worries or anything? Yeah. And the reason we pass around these microphones, it's not that we can't hear each other, it's that it's I am being streamed, and your voices will be streamed to people who can't make it to the center. So that's why we're doing this, because otherwise it's passing around microphones.
I have a couple things that I would like to have come out of this class, and one of them is to have an understanding of reincarnation and rebirth, the differences.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling with that. I'm not sure what the difference is. I see it being used in some places, and I'm not understanding what the difference is.
Okay.
And the other thing is just how to prepare for death and help other people prepare for death for the next realm of what are some things to do.
Okay.
There's a lot of other things, but those are the two main
Those are the
things.
top two.
Those are the top two. if you
Okay.
wanna-
All right. Does that ring a bell for other people? Because I was here last week when Venerable George was talking, and so he is talking a lot about death awareness meditation, and what you're talking about is death dissolution, the stages of dying, which we're definitely going to cover. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm trying to develop a sense of urgency around the practice to make it more important to me during my busy day and make time for it. And I seem to struggle with that.
Okay.
Because I know I'm going to die, but I just don't think it's going to happen today. So
You're right. Okay. Okay. We'll definitely talk about that. Anybody else? Yeah.
I wish I could write it down, so if I start crying or anything, just I'm sorry.
Okay.
But what I want to know is if we have this like 42, 43 days and you're reincarnated. 49?
That's the maximum, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm starting to think about different dimensions. Like if you have that 49 days, you're reincarnated. It's just so cut and dry, and I feel that there may be certain spirits that have died in my life that I still feel, and if they've been reincarnated as who knows what, why are these things happening, and why am I feeling this? Is it just hope? You know, am I just having these fantasies, or is it really something? So that's where my confusion has come in since I've been taking this class all year.
Okay.
Especially since it's hit me personally.
Okay. That's a great question. And I don't know how well it's covered in some of this literature, but I actually have talked with Geshe-la about this very thing. And he's fascinated with it. So some of the things that you ask me, I will definitely talk with him about. It won't just be my idea, because as many of you know, he lived in my house for 9 years, and right now I'm between homes and I'm in his guest room. So, yeah, he's thrilled that he's having a chance to pay me back a little bit. Yeah.
Yes. I had a friend who died, and then I was talking to a Thai monk about a week afterwards, friend of a friend, and I said, where is my friend? Because I heard about this number of days and so forth. And he said, we don't know. We don't know what happened to him, we don't know. Our goal is to look for happiness in this life, not to be concerned with that.
Not to be concerned with the next life, or not to be concerned with where your friend is?
Yeah, or anything about after death, not to be concerned with after death. Is concerned with how to have happiness in this life. Because how do you know it's 49? Just because some guy says so it is? Or whatever.
Yeah, some guy.
So this Thai monk, of course, that's a different tradition, the Theravada tradition. He said, we don't know what happens after life. We don't deal with that. We're just concerned with having happiness in this life.
Yeah, I really can't speak to that. I mean, it may have been, there's somebody behind you too. I mean, if he was here, we could have an interesting conversation. I don't know that he's representing all of that tradition either by saying that. It might just be his personal idea. So it's really hard to say, but I can definitely tell you what the Tibetan Buddhists are talking about, what this course is trying to address, and why in this life are we, if we're supposed to be so present, why are we focusing on something in the future? And we'll talk about that. How you can do both, how they should be both going hand in hand, right? What I always want is for the material here to be very practical, very relatable, something you can use in your life today. Not something that's going to, something that you can use, practice, see the benefits of. And this, to me, helped me the most when I was first studying. If anything that you hear is kind of freaking you out or upsetting you, that's not the purpose. The whole point is to empower you. The whole point of all of it is to empower you. Just keep remembering that, because then sometimes fear can kind of empower us. You want it to be a little more urgent. You want to have a sense of urgency. So you may need to turn that dial up a little bit. Somebody else may have way too much fear, and they need to do these other things, because the whole point is for everybody's mind to be as calm as possible and as empowered as possible. No meditation. There's no one size fits all. There's all this material, and then you're the one who knows your mind. You're the laboratory. So you're the one who has to go, you know what, I need a little bit more of this. But that might be a disaster for somebody else. So if you use the barometer of, is this empowering me? Is this increasing my compassion, my wisdom, my knowledge base to be able to increase my altruism? Well, now we're moving. If it's making me afraid to think about these things, okay, I need to talk to somebody because I'm probably using this incorrectly. Okay? Yeah, did you have a...
Yes, I just have a comment about what I don't know her name.
Okay.
Anyway, Venerable Shernoff, he mentioned about there is a practice that Tibetans in a certain place in Tibet, they go out at night to cemeteries. And the subject of the workshop this weekend was emptiness. So how that practice it relates to the realization of emptiness, because I'm not going to go into detail, but related to what your comment was, is that he said that when beings die, we go to the intermediate state or the bardo, and what we think or label as ghosts or spirits, what he said is that since you are born, some of us have attached some of these,
intermediate beings. Like they never take a, like a flesh or body again. So they just stay in that intermediate state, and they're always attached to another being. And those are the forms that we can see. So we think that the deceased person is around, but it's not necessarily the case. The deceased person might be already, having a rebirth somewhere else. What you're seeing or perceiving is the spirit that was attached to that other to the deceased person. So and I don't know what Geshe is going to say about what her comment was, but that was what he said about what we think or perceive as spirits or ghosts.
Yeah, there's lots of different beings, but we'll get into some of that later. So definitely the things that you all have brought up are things we're going to cover. And yes,
I have one more.
Yes.
This was from a student who was here last week. She's
Mhm.
not here this week, but her question was, what is Buddhism's take on suicide?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so again, I want to just kind of keep hitting this theme that this is meant to empower us. And I don't know how many of you were drawn to Buddhism or to this class even tonight because of the topic. Is this something that to you is kind of intrinsically tied into Buddhism, that was interesting to you because there's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's all of this stuff that seems to be using death. So for me, it was absolutely what brought me to Buddhism, because I had some really, some very scary experiences when I was younger that I didn't want to keep getting in my way, and I didn't want to have a fearful death. And I knew that I had this experience once in my 30s where I was in this house by myself, and I could just imagine somebody killing me. I could just vividly imagine it, and it freaked me out. And so what I remembered, though, was, Gandhi was assassinated, and he was able to die with a peaceful mind because he practiced all the time, and his goal was to be able to die with the Hindu word for God on his lips, and he did, and he was assassinated. Now that's a tall order, but I thought, okay, there is a human being that I've heard of who did that. How did he do that? So the next day I went to the library in the religious section. I was walking there looking for something, and I saw the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. Pulled that out. Whole book is all about how to use the dying process, how to have a calm mind at the moment of death, because it affects the next part of our consciousness. That if consciousness always continues, then what we're putting in our minds right this minute affects our next minute. And so that idea that you're the creator of your next moment of happiness is like on steroids at the moment of death. Because how your mind is through that dying process, the thoughts you have, the state of mind that you have, will affect the next, however your consciousness is continuing. So that's why it's meant to be like such a powerful practice, and that we can use everything all day long to remind ourselves that we need to practice, and to also get familiar with the stages of dying so that we're not taken unaware. So there are these two kinds of things that this course is looking at and that we've been already talking about. One is death awareness, and Venerable George talked a lot about that, and we'll kind of review that. But it's really a way to remind ourselves not to take this moment for granted. Sometimes when I read some of the older literature on death awareness, it's just, maybe it's meant for people who are just kind of like, am I really going to die? I don't need that. So there's that. It's just a reminder to wake up. You are so powerful in this moment. There's so many things that you can do, because the only thing that matters at the time of death is what you've practiced. So the death awareness meditations is to remind you that in this 1 second you can practice. That, these are things we all have heard in classes all the time, but the 3 ways that we create karma or seeds or whatever you want to call it is through our 3 gates of our body, our speech, and our mind. So in a second, we can create some very positive seeds by what we're thinking, by how we express ourselves to others, by our actions with our body. At minimum, we just do no harm, right? So, so that death awareness is to bring that to the fore. And I don't know how many of you, I see some old kind of hippies here who read Carlos Castaneda books back in the 60s, and they talk the same thing. He was talking about using death as an advisor. And what he meant is think of death as sitting right over your left shoulder, so that when you're thinking if you're going to do this, that, or the other thing, you can, if this was my last act on earth, would this be the thing I would want to do? And that then, if you do that thing, even if it's going to work or going to a party or going shopping, if you do that last act with that kind of awareness and presence, it will be a very powerful act, because you'll act differently in the grocery store or at the party or at your work if you think this is your last act. It's not to say you shouldn't do those things. It's about the mind that you bring to those acts. And that's how you use death as an advisor. And that's the same thing I get from the death awareness meditations. So the second thing that this course is jam-packed with, and will be, not tonight, but we'll get there, is the death dissolution states. So this is really what happens to the mind as the body is dissolving, right? I think there's this, so this is the book that we recommend for this course. It's out there for sale in the bookstore. So especially if you're getting credit in this class, and by credit, it's it's for this certificate. But it's a really, really good book, because it has got everything that we're talking about packed into here. And it includes the death awareness meditations and the death dissolution stages, and why you should be doing any of this. And so I love this Tibetan saying that's in the very first part of the book. It says, everybody dies, but no one is dead. So that kind of sums up the Tibetan view of it. We're all dying, right? As soon as we're conceived, we're in the process of evolving and leaving this life, but nobody gets out of here dead. So, it's not going to be that easy. It's not going to be that easy to just, this life is over, and now, good. That's basically the Tibetan view of suicide, is that nobody gets out of here dead. So if we're not getting out of here dead, then a preemptive strike isn't really going to change that much. That's the kind of party line on it. It's not really going to solve the problem. So I remember also feeling that when I was younger, that people who kill themselves, they actually have hope. They have hope that it's going to change something. And I didn't have that hope. I didn't think that was going to change anything. So knowing that you're going to bring with you all the things that you are, all the seeds that you are creating. That's the good news and the alarming news. So we'll talk a little bit about the antidotes to the alarming part of that. I just want to review something that Venerable George was saying, because whether you know it or not, during the meditations, he was going over this very carefully laid out death awareness meditation. And in Tibetan Buddhism, everything is kind of like an accordion file. And the labels are, for the labels for this one, are the 3 roots. And in each root, there's 3 reasons. So that would be 9 reasons. And in each root, there's 3 decisions based on those reasons. So everything is very logical. It's not this woo-woo thing. It's very logical. And it has, what people used to do is memorize all of this, so that they can recount it while they're in the grocery store or tilling the fields or whatever they are. So the 3 roots, does anybody want to take a guess? You'll remember them as soon as I say them, if I can find them, because it's what George was going over. Oh wait, I marked it. I'm so much smarter than I realize. Okay, so the first root is contemplate that death is definite. Remember Venerable George was talking about this? And the 3 reasons for that is because death will definitely come and therefore cannot be avoided. And it's not just those words. You come up with you really go through it and analyze it. Like, have you ever known anybody who avoided it? You just go through these things no matter how much money they have, no matter how wealthy or popular they are. The second reason for that root is because our lifespan cannot be extended and diminishes unceasingly. And the third is because even when we are alive, there is little time to practice. So the first root, contemplation that death is definite. And then the first decision is that I must practice with urgency. Then the second root is contemplation that the time of death is indefinite. So the first is that death is definite, but the second root is that the time is indefinite. And the three reasons there are because our lifespan in this world is indefinite. It means we come into this world without, we don't have our expiration date on our butt. Because the cause of death are many and the causes of life are few. And we can think about how very fragile this body is, and we can go through lists of that to kind of refresh ourselves about how many causes of death there are. And I grew up in New Orleans, and in the New Orleans obituary section, they usually list the cause of death, which I always found fascinating and horrifying as a kid. How many people got shot, how many people died in a car accident, how many people died of this disease. But they'll list that right under all these wonderful things about the person. This is how they died. It's like, wow, it's really kind of a wake-up call. We don't do that here, I don't think. But and then the third reason under that root is because the time of death is uncertain due to the fragility of the body. Okay. And then the third root, the second decision then, based on that second root, is I must practice now. And so when you realize you must practice now, then it means you don't have to wait and go home and find a cushion. You don't have to wait, and it's immediately. And then what is it? We'll talk a little bit about what that means. The third root is the contemplation that at the time of death, nothing helps except practice. One, because at the time of death, our friends are of no help. I mean, they can't reverse what's going on. They could help by reminding you of something, but unless you already have it in your head, they can't do anything. The second one is because at the time of death, our wealth is of no help. It's not going to change anything. It might make you more comfortable, but it's not going to change the fact that you're dying. And the third one is because at the time of death, our body is of no help. And so then the third decision in that root is I will practice non-attachment to any of the wonderful things of this life. Meaning, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy things or use things or buy things or have things. It's meaning that we understand that they go away. So we hold them differently. Just like, Geshe-la talks about this example, and I think it's perfect. When we go into a hotel room, we enjoy it. We use the extra towels. We watch cable if we don't have cable. We enjoy all those many pillows, whatever it is. We enjoy it, but we don't freak out when we leave the next day. Maybe when we see the bill, but not the idea that we're leaving. It's just because that's the kind of, we held it a little looser because we didn't expect it to be ours for a long time. There was an understanding that you're there for one night or 2 nights or whatever it is you're paying for. So that's that kind of non-attachment they're talking about. So in that way, you can leave the hotel room happily or with an easier mind. That's what we're trying to practice. That you said this before, that renunciation doesn't mean going away from the world. It means knowing that the world goes away. And we know that things go away. We relate to them differently. And we've all heard stories of people who know that they only have a month to live, a year to live, whatever it is. And they are like the happiest, most compassionate, blissed out human beings because of that. So if we can practice that now with urgency, we would be just like them. We would be able to just see things so differently because we're not thinking, oh, this person really ticked me off at work, and now this is going to happen and that's going to happen. We're going to think, oh, I could die tomorrow, and so I just want this person to be okay. So take notes on how that ripples out into your life between now and when we come back. That's one homework I'll remind you before we go. But you're going to have lots of opportunities probably over the Thanksgiving holiday to practice these things. So then the homework is to see, make a note of when do you want to practice that. What's going to be the easiest thing? Start with the easiest thing, because you can build up to Thanksgiving because we have a week. So what are the easiest times for you to kind of remind yourself of that, trying to bring that awareness in, whether it's in the grocery store or someplace easy, someplace where you know you can have success. Someplace where you know you're going to have success, because change only happens when you have success, and then you build on that success. So go ahead and think right now, where do I want to have this mind state that, I'm trying to figure out how to say it, that I'm at peace, that this is a powerful present moment. I am right now in this moment, and how is that going to affect then how you are in the world? If this was your last day, in a powerful way, not a maudlin way, if you know what I mean, but just in this powerful present way, and how does that affect you? Again, think of the place that it's the easiest. When I was doing something like this practice on patience, I was very excited to go and try it, because what Geshe was saying is you have to catch yourself before it rises up, before your impatience rises up, or it's too late. So catch yourself when it's small, and then use all these antidotes, and you'll be able to change your mind. We all want to do all these things, but what if we could just change our mood? That would be revolutionary. So catch it in the upswing. So I was so excited, I couldn't wait, and I was trying to find what would be an easy one. And then that came to me right away that night, because my dog kept waking me up to go outside. And I loved my dog. I just loved her. So I thought, I'm about to lose my patience with her because it's the third time. I can catch it now. And it changed. I went outside with her. It was just a totally different experience than if I was annoyed with her for waking me up 3 times in a row and then come back to bed upset. So see if you can find something like that to practice the next 24 hours that's easy, that gives you some success, and then build on it so that when you come back here, you can tell us the success story as well as the challenging story. I'm sure there'll be challenges. Okay, so I'm just trying to also give you an understanding of, in Tibetan Buddhism, how it has this accordion file. So you could pull out one of these and practice that one meditation for weeks, or you could do all of them as a kind of a refresher. But when you really sit and do it, because I know there's this part of our brain that's like, yeah, I know that. But when you get that part to kind of go out the door for a little while and you sit and really go through those things, it will have a different kind of an effect than just us running through them here. And we will do them together, believe me. We'll also do the death dissolution. Okay, briefly, I think I can answer one of the questions right now about reincarnation and rebirth. So, and I'll double check this with Geshe, but I think the word reincarnation is meant to describe the whole system, the whole overview of samsara. Reincarnation is the process of taking rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. And so this is a rebirth. Reincarnation is the whole ballgame, if that makes sense. And people may be using them interchangeably, but and confusing us, because sometimes we're translating things from Tibetan. But, people will say a perfect human rebirth. That's a human rebirth with all of the qualities that allow us to sit here and think about this. So that's a perfect human rebirth. It fits inside the whole system of reincarnation. Reincarnation, you could be reincarnating into all kinds of different realms. Okay, I am kind of reincarnating all over the place here. Okay, so any questions before I kind of go on? All right. So when we get to this decision, like I will practice now, what are they talking about exactly? That's again where it's going to be different for each one of us. But some of the things that I think are helpful to talk about now is, when people get close to death, they often have a lot of regrets. They often are filled with stories and remorse or whatever. And so I think part of it's like we can practice now to to ease our mind about those things, that there's things that we can do in two camps. One is to accumulate, because we're only taking with us the actions that we have created, right? The kind of bucket of good and bad that we're bringing with us. So there's things that we can accumulate, virtuous things, easily, with our thoughts, just easily. And we can really fill that bucket. But sometimes people have things in that negative bucket that they're very concerned about that don't really come out until there's not much time. There are definitely things that we can do to offset those while we are able to now. And I know that some of you have been through the module and you've heard other teachers talk about that. We'll keep touching on that because there's things you can do relatively easily to try to diminish those. Does that make sense? Because that's part of this whole module of death and dying. To die with a happy mind means you feel like you've done everything that you can do to increase and be the best person that you can possibly be on this planet, which usually means we're all going to have our package of regrets. What can we do about them now? Some of the things I like the best are, yes, there's definite Buddhist practices that you could do, or whatever religion you are. Every religion has those practices. Every religion has practices of purifying negativities. But you can also do them just combining them with whatever activity you have. Since motivation is so important, and since our thoughts are so important, and our mind is so important, and our visualizations are so important, you can do it like this. And this is not just me making this up. This is in the texts. So they might not use this example, but they use cleaning as an example. So I'm cleaning this bathtub, and I'm, thinking, okay, here's a good chance to practice, rather than just spending 10 minutes cleaning the bathtub. This grime in the bathtub are all my negative thoughts. Or I can take some specific ones that I'm particularly unhappy with, my jealousy, and I can even think of some that I'm very concerned about. And my cleaning it is cleaning that off. I'm cleaning this off. This has a powerful effect because it's combining the regret that you have over the action, right? Combining it with some action that you're taking. And especially then if you have taken refuge in Buddha Dharma or whatever religion you are, then that's a third power. And then a very strong determination not to commit that act again. So it has the four opponent powers of regret. I regret that I was so jealous, and I'm bringing that to mind. I take refuge in this practice, which is connected to whatever religion you are, right? Then the remedy, in this case, this cleaning, or it could be mantras or a prayer or whatever it is, this remedy of cleaning. And then this promise not to repeat that. And then really developing this faith that you have purified this, that this shouldn't be haunting you because you've done what you can do to clean it up. And that last part takes a little bit of practice, but the more you practice at cleaning and purifying, the more you'll start to see these results and you'll have more faith that it's working. So that's something very practical that we can do in our lifetime to help us in the whole process of death and dying. The other thing is, I know that Venerable George talked a lot about impermanence and the two types of impermanence, gross and subtle impermanence, right? So we're going to do a little meditation on impermanence in a minute, but also there was one point where I was just inundated with impermanence, and it was all on, I didn't realize that it was all on one end. And so I just want to tell you this story in case it helps, because Geshe-la helped me with this a lot. So I was taking care, this was after Katrina, so I'm from New Orleans, so my whole town it's such a disaster. So I was watching that impermanence. And then taking care of my mother who had to leave New Orleans and come live with me, and she had dementia. So watching that impermanence. And then eventually, after 7 years of that, she was in a facility and going there every day. It was just brutal. And so I was saying to Geshe-la, what do I do when I'm just feeling so overwhelmed with the sadness of impermanence? And he said, oh, that's easy. I said, really? Tell me, because I'm just so overwhelmed with the sadness of it. He said, but you're just looking at what's leaving. You have to also look at what arises, because it's only because things are impermanent that anything can arise. It's not just that things go away. So, I mean, that's very obvious in some ways, like children being born, but also for our own selves. We can all think of how our minds changed on a topic, or how our relationship was reconciled or something. It's only because of impermanence that things can change. And so that's the empowering part of impermanence. And that's also meant to empower us as we move closer to our own next state, you know. So let's do this meditation on impermanence, and because I need a break from talking. I'm an introvert. Did you know that? It's like zaps me. Okay, so get into a comfortable position. If you're sitting in a chair, make sure your feet are flat on the floor, uncrossed, because you want to have your back. The most important part is that your spine is as straight as possible without being arched or tense. You want to try to stack your vertebrae like coins. And you tuck your chin a little bit so that the top of because your head is on the top of your spine, and you don't want to break that line by lifting your chin. So you tuck your chin a little bit. Have your arms out away from your body so it doesn't impede your breathing. You can have your hands on your lap or in a meditative mudra. Kind of keep your eyes open or closed, or gently open a little bit to let some light in if you're sleepy. Put your tongue at the back of your front teeth to kind of relax your jaw. And first, just bring your awareness to your breath. And count 3 nice, deep, slow, relaxing breaths. And I want you to pick a place that you're familiar with. It could be a home, a building, an office, a block, some place that you're familiar with over time. If you have trouble picking, just pick one. You can do this again later with a different one. Just pick one for now and go in and look around it. Look at the things on the wall, the floor. What does it feel like? Smell like? Go outside and look at what's going on right now at this place in your imagination, at least. Get a good sense of it. And then go back in time about a year and take a look at that space again. Are there any changes, big or small? Look around. Notice people, any difference in the people, the feel, the general vibe of the place, anything outside that's different. And then go back about 10 years. About 2009, 2008. What is the place like? What's different? What's the same? Look at the walls, the floor, the people. Go outside. go back another decade. If you weren't there, imagine what it would have been like 20 years ago. Go inside and look around. The furniture, the people, the general feeling in 1999. Now go back 30 to 40 years and imagine what it would have been like then. I want you to go back, keep going back like that at your own pace, through time, as far back as you want. Keep looking at this space. If the space didn't exist, what did? What was there on that land? Just keep dialing back in time. Now bring it to the present day again. And now move it forward a year. What are some changes that might take place in a year to the people, the decorations, the landscape of your space? It's up to your imagination now. And go forward 5 years, 10 years. I'll give you a few minutes to go as far forward in time as you want, creating what it might look like into the future. And then come back to the present moment and open your eyes. Okay, what I want you to do for the next 10 minutes is just to get into small groups of 4 or 5 people. Linda can help organize you. And just talk a little bit about what happened in that meditation for you and how it might or might not be of benefit in this topic we're discussing. So how it relates, if it relates, and what your experience was. Okay? And then we'll come back to, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes on that. So make sure everybody gets a chance. Introduce yourself if you don't know each other. Groups of 4 or 5. Yeah, and make sure you include people who are here for the first time.
replaced by something different. In Montreal, and then after that, Buddhist police fairy. No, just
I wonder if we're all gonna end up saying we went back to what the place we used to live. So I've lived here now for 13 years, and, you know, most of the time the same. And so I actually went specifically to the kids' room, because my son is in my house is at the house.
I have actually a hard time imagining.
First of all, I think it's just a meaningful place for me. But secondly, I figured that it was a place that was gonna be easy to go back and forward and see a lot of change, right?
I was thinking more
And
about
so,
place
yeah, it's interesting
rather than
to
place.
think
That
about
place
there's
became
a
kind of
space in
like,
the
because
world,
I was
right?
like, I don't know. If
Forget that. My son certainly thinks it's second.
Younger
So,
versions.
like, it's interesting to see how much change there is, right? It's a very short period of time. Then you go back a little further, and then it's like his family's living there, and they had a teenager who was in his room.
Rather than like
I'm not
a
sure there's a
station
giant stain on the floor that we had that got removed. I think we removed it because I think it was covered by something when we bought the house. But anyway,
Permanence of
that was like there are things that I can remember that I can put myself there. But then if you go back further, right, like 100 years ago, there's no house there.
I thought about,
So
didn't really
then
think
there's probably a
about
forest,
that.
right?
The center I used to
And it's
do in
interesting because
LA.
then I can start to.
There used to
I
be a
didn't go back
house.
to dinosaurs, whatever, but it's like there's this long period of time where probably
And
not much changed that
When
I'm
the first
aware
time I
of,
went
right?
there,
I'm sure the trees grow, die,
I had
run bugs,
two-week
animals and whatnot.
retreat,
But it's
like,
like,
not a
it's kind of like time accelerates
residential
going
retreat.
backward, and then the same thing
Retreat
going
that you go
forward.
as much as you can over 2
Go
weeks
forward
on
100 years,
deck.
I don't know,
And
rotted
the
out,
first time
decrepit
I went
house, or
to
maybe
Venice,
it burns down or whatever, or maybe there's a new
And I
house
thought
in
about
place.
this a lot over the years.
It's interesting how there's
Whenever I think
there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of change locally, like plus and minus 10 years.
Comes to grips
And then
with
outside
my
that,
dad,
it's kind of like whoosh,
Death and Rebirth,
which isn't really true, right? But it's
You
as
will
far
be
as I
happy.
know, you know, as far as what I can.
You're gonna, even if it's not conscious suffering, you're gonna suffer.
It's kind of true.
And, you know, all that kind of happened with that, that was a big turning point, I think, for me. Around that time. I lost some people shortly after that. There was a lot of impermanence. That's kind of where I went. Not exactly. What about you?
You got flying cars, we make sure you get flying cars. Inevitable, in some sense. Right, yeah, I mean, you can quibble about the large scale, but essentially, that's all.
Okay, take another couple minutes to wrap up.
No, right? Or has on the market right now. Find it.
That's something to aspire to. Yeah.
Okay, and try to finish that sentence and come back to the larger group. Thank you. Any reports to the larger group? Any thoughts or reports or questions? Overheard little bits, but not much. How many people went back to the house they're in right now? Was that a common one? Okay. Anything surprising when you were meditating on that?
I'll say something. So I actually chose my favorite hike in Umstead that I do. And it was interesting, like thinking back, because I could kind of visualize the land and how, the dam wouldn't have been there and that sort of thing. But then when we came forward, it kind of was devastating, like with as much, I know, and it made me really sad by the end of the meditation, because that's how we ended it, because of what's happening in our, in our world, in our environment. And then I could just picture like trash and, like paint on the wall, and, and it left me feeling very sad that type of change feels imminent to me.
Right. Yeah. So later, right before you go to sleep, do a positive one. Because they're both possible. Because it's impermanent, either is possible, right? Yeah, there was this one guy, we were doing this meditation, and he was like a Shakespearean scholar, and he said that it really freaked him out, because he says, does that mean that Shakespearean texts are going to just disappear? I said, no, but it means that it's always changing. So that's why we have movies, of Shakespeare in Love and all these things, We never would have had that before. But that's why we also work hard to change things, But yeah, it's hard to combat some of the things that we can see moving negatively forward. Yeah. Anybody else?
It makes me think and Linda, what you said about the environment and climate change and that sense of the future and where are my grandchildren what is it going to be like even in just a couple generations with the pace at which things are changing. And then I think of how frequently I've sat in teachings and heard about this is the time of degeneration of the Dharma. Oh, well, that's great. We know. I mean, it's both on the subtle and the gross level. Then it seems to almost be kind of in synchronicity or corresponding or something. I don't know. It just seems like that's not happy thought.
Okay, I have a quick story, and then he had his hand up too. So I was reading this book about this Chinese monk who had to flee China, I think during the Cultural Revolution. So anyway, he lived in Woodstock, New York, and there was a period of time he could go back to China. So he went back, and he was rebuilding the small monastery where he had studied as a young man. And people there were telling him, "You're crazy. The Chinese are just going to tear this down again." He said, "Well, it will be my karma to build it. Let it be theirs to destroy it." So I think to me, that means that we should still try to save the planet and do all these things. It doesn't mean, because that's the imprints we're leaving on our mind stream and on the planet, and even more reason to do it when we put into context the idea and study of cause and effect. You know, does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And what others see us do, it kind of goes, that's what they'll do.
Right.
You know, pick it up, make
Right.
it a little nicer.
Right.
Don't let it-
Right. Even in the face that he knew this was going to be torn down immediately, he was still building it because that was what he wanted to create. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm one of the people that also visualized their house or went
Uh-huh.
back to their house or whatever. And the thing that struck me that really surprised me was that I can picture pretty well, you know, what my kids' room is specifically where I went, what it was like a year ago. And then you go back 10 years and there's no kids there. And then you go back 20 years and then we're not in the house yet. And you go back like 40 years, now there's no house there yet. But maybe there's a road, and Kildare Farm is probably just 2 lanes then. You go back 100 years and now there's covered wagons, but or not covered wagons, horses, blah, blah, blah. But the point is that, like, once I got back to a certain point, it felt like things kind of stopped changing, right? Like now the trees, I guess, maybe are taller or shorter, but probably this is just a forest and there's no house here, there's no people here. And at that point, it was like I had a sense that going backward, things kind of like the passage of time accelerated because it seemed like nothing's changing until I get here, because apparently I'm the most important thing in the universe, right? And then there's this period of time that I'm, I guess, hyper aware of all the changes, even though, and this is what I realized when we were talking in our group, even though, you know, 1,000 years ago, time was still passing at the same speed there. Right. And so, I don't know, the bugs, the foxes, the deer, whatever, they were, I guess it was probably pretty important to them. But there's something in that that's interesting to me about my presence or my awareness of the space having an impact on how I perceive time in the space.
It's interesting because maybe a kind of another way to do that exercise is to imagine that you are in each of those, you're a different incarnation in each of those time periods, you know. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. So I have another story about, I took Geshe-la to South Carolina several years ago, and he wanted to see like a museum or something on slavery. So we found this plantation there. I wish I could remember the name, because what they had done is they had taken the slave quarters had been designed, they were now made out of brick, and they had been designed into like apartments at one period of time. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
But I've been down there and seen some of the plantations.
Yeah. Well, so this one had like a row of these little brick that at one point been the slave quarters, and in each one they took a different period of time of slavery and had stories inside and just described that era of slavery. So you went from each one to, you know, another 20 years forward, and it was just, to me, it was just devastating. And the last one, there was emancipation, and there was also a picture of Barack Obama on the wall, and Michelle Obama's great-great-grandfather lived 20 miles away from there. It was just stunning because it felt like this live meditation I was doing by walking through shack to shack to shack. And at the end, I came out just kind of very depressed and overwhelmed, and Geshe-la came out like, wow, things in this country can change so fast. And he goes, in India, this would take so much longer. And I thought, well, that's a different way of looking at it, you know. But he said, imagine it moving forward now, you know. So it was just like walking through impermanence, you know, just walking through it. And then what can I do to try to affect that? So if you're walking through a museum of your own consciousness, you know, you have this lifetime that you can walk through and see. So another way to do this meditation is to take an idea that you've had on anything and go backward and forward in time and look at it. So whatever your idea is right now about Buddhism or anything, just look at it, really examine it, do that same thing. Go backward in time. You'll see just how different it is, how much it changes because of the impermanence of it. So we're going to wind up here, but that's part of your homework. I really do give homework, and we really are going to talk about it when you come back. And when we do come back, we'll spend the last two classes, definitely doing some of the meditations on the death dissolution states if you all want. It's not meant to freak anybody out. Again, it's meant to empower you because it actually has really good ending too. The meditations have a really good ending because it's all about the Tibetan Buddhists believe that if you've practiced and are very familiar with these stages, at the final stage you have the chance to use that to be in this kind of state of bliss. And so even if you can't achieve that, at minimum you can have a calm mind which kind of directs where you're going to take your next rebirth. At the other end, the best end is that you could be in this state of bliss for, and that would also affect where you're going to be reborn. So that's what got me hooked into Buddhism, is like, oh, I can go from having this kind of flashback to I could be killed to like, oh, I can use this in a really positive way. Okay, I think I'll study this. So that's all. We're definitely going to go through that. And Geshe is teaching the death dissolution states one Wednesday in December. I think it's the first Wednesday in December. So for extra credit, go to that class too, because he'll teach it way better than I will. And so the homework is to kind of note places in your day where you can practice, where you can change your mind, focus, and try to be as present as possible, where you can use, where is it, what is it that you need? So we've already heard, the need for urgency. What is it that you particularly need? What meditation do you need in your daily life? Is it purification? Is it urgency? Is it familiarity? Is it death awareness? Try to find that for yourself, and then also noting and using impermanence. So we didn't actually get to that part about like, how did you find that you can use this? But the way that you can is it just helps you with the death awareness to understand this flow that we're in. So when we did this meditation quite a bit in New Orleans before Katrina, and after Katrina, I would hear from a lot of people in that class who wrote me saying that meditation helped them so much as they were struggling and moving all over the country after Katrina. So yeah. So let's take a minute to dedicate the merit that we've created by gathering together on a Monday night and thinking about these things and being generous with our sharing and patient with each other and patient with me. So imagine that all of this that you have created tonight, it's not lost. Everything we do, it's cause and effect. Everything we do is a seed. So now the point is that you direct where this seed is going to ripen. And that's your choice. It's like a bank account. It's highly recommended, however, that you deposit these seeds for your future enlightenment, so that the path between where you are now and the path of complete enlightenment is swift, the obstacles are removed, lessened, that this is all furthering you on that path. Because as you achieve that path, even before you achieve that path, but as you're on that path, your actions will benefit all of those around you. All of us around you will benefit from your increased compassion and wisdom. So may you all achieve this state quickly. All right, good night. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I will see you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.